The evening sky had turned a deep purple as Michael drove home after a long day. 12 years with the United States Secret Service had taught him many things, but patience topped the list. Today had been particularly demanding. A foreign dignitary with a packed schedule meant Michael had been on his feet since 5 a.m., constantly scanning crowds, coordinating with team members, and staying 3 steps ahead of potential problems. All he wanted now was a hot shower and the leftover pasta his wife had promised to save for him. The roads were mostly empty as he drove through the quiet suburban neighborhood. Michael rolled down his window slightly, letting the cool autumn air wash over him. His shoulders relaxed for what felt like the first time all day. The flash of blue and red lights in his rearview mirror jolted him back to alertness. Michael checked his speedometer. He was going exactly the speed limit. He hadn't run any stop signs or made any illegal turns. For a brief moment he wondered if his taillight might be out. Something his wife had mentioned last weekend. Well, let's get this over with, he muttered to himself as he signaled and pulled over to the side of the road. The police cruiser stopped about 15 feet behind him. Michael did what came naturally after years of law enforcement training. He turned off his engine, placed his hands at the 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel, and waited. In his side mirror, Michael watched as an officer stepped out of the patrol car. Something about the way the officer approached, hand already resting on his holstered weapon, made Michael's neck tighten. This wasn't standard procedure for a routine traffic stop. The officer's flashlight beam swept across his rear window before landing directly on his side mirror, temporarily blinding him. License and registration, the officer demanded before he'd even fully reached the driver's window. No greeting, no explanation for the stop. Michael could now see the officer clearly. White, maybe mid-30s, with a buzz cut and a name tag that read, Officer Wilson. "Good evening, officer," Michael said calmly. "May I ask why I was pulled over?" The officer's face remained impassive. "License and registration first," Michael nodded. "My registration is in the glove compartment and my wallet is in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for them now, okay?" The officer didn't respond, which wasn't a good sign. Michael knew the routine all too well, both as an agent and as a black man who had been pulled over more times than he cared to count. "I'm reaching for my glove compartment now," Michael narrated as he slowly moved his right hand from the steering wheel. He kept his movements deliberate and his left hand visible on the wheel. As his fingers touched the latch of the glove compartment, the atmosphere changed in an instant. "Hands where I can see them. Now!" Officer Wilson had drawn his weapon and was pointing it directly at Michael's head. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs, but years of training kicked in. He slowly raised both hands back to the steering wheel. "My registration is in the glove compartment, sir. I was just doing what you asked." "Don't tell me what you were doing," the officer snapped, gun still aimed at Michael. "I saw you reaching." A cold feeling settled in Michael's stomach. He'd been here before. Not with a gun pointed at him, but in situations where his actions were automatically viewed as threatening. He took a slow, deep breath. "Officer, I understand your concern for safety. I'm a federal agent with the United States Secret Service. My credentials are in my wallet. May I reach for them very slowly to show you?" The officer's expression shifted slightly, a mix of surprise and something else. Disbelief. "Keep your left hand on the wheel. Use your right hand, very slowly, to get your wallet. Any sudden moves and we're going to have a problem." Michael nodded, keeping his left hand firmly on the wheel, while his right hand moved with exaggerated slowness toward his back pocket. He extracted his wallet carefully, holding it up so the officer could see it wasn't a weapon. "I'm going to open my wallet now to show you my credentials," Michael explained, his voice steady despite the gun still pointed at him. He flipped open the leather wallet to reveal his Secret Service badge and ID card. Officer Wilson leaned slightly closer, squinting at the badge, then at Michael's face, then back at the badge. The gun lowered a fraction of an inch. "Let me see that," Wilson demanded, reaching for the wallet with his free hand. Michael handed it over, breathing a little easier now that the gun wasn't aimed directly at his face. But his relief was short-lived. A smirk spread across Officer Wilson's face as he examined the credentials. Then came a chuckle, short, dismissive, and laced with contempt. "Secret Service, huh?" Wilson laughed again, louder this time. "And I'm the Tooth Fairy." He tossed the wallet back through the window onto Michael's lap. "You expect me to believe the president has you working for him?" Michael felt a flare of anger but kept his voice level. "Sir, those are legitimate federal credentials. You can verify them by calling the number on the back of my ID or contacting the Washington field office. Wilson's eyes narrowed. You know what? I've seen some good fakes in my time, but this one takes the cake. Step out of the vehicle, hands where I can see them. Michael weighed his options. Refusing would escalate the situation, but complying meant putting himself in an even more vulnerable position. The irony wasn't lost on him. Hours ago, he'd been part of a security detail protecting a high-ranking official, and now he was being treated like a criminal. Officer, before I step out, I want to be clear that I am a federal agent, and you're making a serious mistake. I'd like you to call your supervisor. Out, now. The gun was back up, pointed squarely at him. Michael slowly opened the door with his left hand, keeping his right hand visible. As he stepped out onto the asphalt, he noticed a few cars slowing down as they passed. Witnesses. That could be good or bad, depending on how this played out. Face the vehicle, hands on the hood, Wilson ordered, his voice carrying in the quiet street. Michael complied, the cool metal of his car hood against his palms. He could hear Wilson speaking into his radio. Dispatch, I've got a male subject claiming to be Secret Service. Looks like fraudulent identification, possible impersonation of a federal officer. An older couple walking their dog on the sidewalk had stopped to watch. The woman had her phone out recording. Michael felt a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. At least there would be a record of whatever happened next. You're making a mistake, Michael said again, his voice loud enough for the bystanders to hear. I am Special Agent Michael Taylor with the United States Secret Service. You can verify my identity right now with one phone call. Wilson stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You know how many people I arrest who swear they're innocent? Everyone's got a story. What Officer Wilson didn't know was that Michael had managed to press the emergency button on his phone when he first reached for his wallet, a feature set up for agents in distress. It sent his GPS location directly to Secret Service dispatch with a priority alert. As Wilson began to pat him down with rough, aggressive movements, Michael spotted a second police cruiser turning onto the street. This one had supervisor markings. Looks like your sergeant is arriving, Michael said calmly. I suggest you explain to him why you've drawn your weapon on a federal agent. Wilson glanced over his shoulder, momentarily distracted. Shut up. This has nothing to do with... He never finished his sentence. Two unmarked black SUVs had appeared behind the supervisor's car, pulling up with urgent speed but controlled precision. The doors opened and 4 men and women in suits emerged, moving with the unmistakable purpose of federal agents. Michael allowed himself a small breath of relief. The cavalry had arrived. Officer Wilson's hand tightened on his gun, uncertain now as he watched the newcomers approach. The police supervisor got out of his car at the same time, looking confused at the sudden crowd of serious-looking individuals converging on what should have been a routine traffic stop. What's going on here? The sergeant called out, hurrying toward them. A tall woman with short gray hair stepped forward from the group of agents, her badge already out. I'm Special Agent in Charge Rivera with the United States Secret Service. You have one of our agents detained at gunpoint. I suggest you order your officer to stand down immediately. The sergeant looked from Rivera to Wilson to Michael, comprehension dawning on his face like the first light of a very unpleasant day. Wilson, holster your weapon, he ordered sharply. Officer Wilson hesitated, looking from his boss to Michael to the growing number of stern-faced federal agents surrounding them. The night had suddenly become very complicated, and for Officer Wilson it was about to get much worse. The blue and red lights painted the street in alternating colors as Officer Wilson finally lowered his weapon. His face had transformed from smug confidence to something closer to panic. The sergeant, a stocky man with salt and pepper hair and deep creases around his eyes, approached with quick, purposeful steps. What's the situation here, Wilson? The sergeant asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. Before Wilson could answer, Special Agent in Charge Rivera stepped forward, her badge still prominently displayed. Your officer pulled over one of my agents, drew his weapon without justification, refused to verify his credentials, and called in a false report of federal impersonation. I'd like to know what's happening here as well. Michael remained with his hands on the hood of his car, maintaining his composure despite the humiliation of being treated like a criminal. The small crowd of onlookers had grown, with several people holding up phones to record the unfolding drama. You can stand up straight, Agent Taylor, Rivera called to him. These officers won't be detaining you any further. Michael slowly straightened and turned around. He could see Wilson's face reddening as the realization sank in. The sergeant looked between Michael and his credentials, which Rivera had handed to him for verification. These appear to be in order, the sergeant said, returning the badge and ID to Michael with a respectful nod. Officer Wilson, holster your weapon immediately. Wilson complied, his movements stiff. Sir, I was following protocol. He made a sudden movement toward the glove compartment. I clearly stated I was reaching for my registration, which you requested. Michael interrupted, his voice level but firm. I narrated every movement before I made it. The sergeant held up a hand. We'll sort this out. Agent Taylor, may I ask why you were pulled over in the first place? Michael shook his head. I was never told. I was driving the speed limit, obeying all traffic laws. Officer Wilson approached my vehicle, demanded my license and registration without explanation, and escalated to deadly force when I complied. One of the Secret Service agents who had arrived with Rivera was speaking into his phone, his voice low but urgent. Michael recognized him as Agent Chen, one of the tech specialists from his unit. We've got dash cam footage from Agent Taylor's vehicle, Chen announced, walking over to join the group. Standard procedure for all agents' personal vehicles. We can review it now if that would help clarify matters. The sergeant nodded, relief flashing across his face at the prospect of objective evidence. That would be helpful, yes. Chen pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen a few times. Footage is being streamed now. Time-stamped from the beginning of the stop. They gathered around the tablet screen, watching as the scene played out exactly as Michael had described. The audio was clear, Michael announcing his movements, Wilson's immediate escalation, the dismissal of legitimate federal credentials, and the mocking laughter that followed. The sergeant's face grew darker with each passing moment of the footage. When it ended, he turned to Wilson with barely contained fury. You laughed at a federal agent's credentials? You called them fake without verification? Wilson shifted uncomfortably, looking everywhere but at his superior officer. Sir, you know how many people try to talk their way out of tickets. The badge looked. I just thought. You thought what exactly? Rivera cut in, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. That someone would create fake Secret Service credentials for a traffic stop? Or were there other factors informing your judgment? The implication hung in the air. Michael had been in law enforcement long enough to know exactly what Rivera was suggesting. That race had played a role in Wilson's treatment of him. The sergeant seemed to understand too. He turned to Michael, his expression grave. Agent Taylor, on behalf of the department, I want to extend my sincere apologies for this incident. This is not how we train our officers to conduct themselves. Michael nodded, acknowledging the apology without accepting it. 12 years in the Secret Service had taught him to choose his battles carefully. This wasn't over, but escalating tensions here on the street wouldn't help anyone. I appreciate that, Sergeant, Michael said, but I'd like to file a formal complaint about Officer Wilson's conduct. This goes beyond a simple misunderstanding. The older couple who had been watching from the sidewalk had inched closer. The woman, still recording on her phone, called out, We saw the whole thing. He had no reason to pull his gun. Wilson's head snapped toward the couple. This is a police matter. Please step back. Actually, Rivera interjected, this is now a federal matter involving harassment of a federal agent, and those witnesses' footage may be important evidence. More police cars had arrived, drawn by the unusual sight of unmarked federal vehicles in the growing crowd. A tall black man in a police captain's uniform emerged from one of them, surveying the scene with obvious concern. Captain Rodriguez, the sergeant said, straightening his posture. We have a situation involving one of our officers and a Secret Service agent. The captain approached, his expression grave. I received the alert. Agent Taylor, are you all right? Michael was surprised the captain knew his name already. Yes, sir. Shaken, but unharmed. Rodriguez nodded. The chief called me directly when he heard a Secret Service agent was being held at gunpoint in our jurisdiction. This is already getting attention at levels you don't want to imagine, Wilson. Wilson had gone pale. His earlier bravado completely evaporated. Sir, I was just following protocol for officer safety. Save it, Rodriguez cut him off. I've just watched the dash cam footage on my way here. The sergeant sent it to me. There was no justification for drawing your weapon, let alone maintaining it after seeing federal credentials. The crowd had grown larger, with people murmuring and pointing. Some were typing on their phones, likely posting about the incident on social media. Michael could see tomorrow's headlines forming. Cop pulls gun on Secret Service agent. Agent Chen approached Michael, speaking quietly. Director Peterson has been briefed. He wants to know if you need anything. The mention of the Secret Service director being aware of the situation underscored its seriousness. Michael shook his head slightly. Just following proper procedure now is fine. Rodriguez turned to the gathering crowd. Folks, this is an active investigation. We appreciate your concern, but we need to clear this area. If you witnessed what happened and have footage, an officer will take your contact information. A young officer began politely directing people to move back, while another collected information from those who had been recording. Rodriguez then addressed Rivera. Special agent in charge, I'd like to suggest we continue this at the station. We can take formal statements there, away from this circus. Rivera nodded. Agreed, Agent Taylor will ride with us. We'll follow you to the precinct. Wilson stood awkwardly by his patrol car, uncertain of his status. Rodriguez noticed and made it clear. Officer Wilson, you'll surrender your weapon and badge to the sergeant and ride with him to the station. You're on administrative leave effective immediately pending a full investigation. Wilson's mouth fell open. Captain, this is an overreaction. This is procedure when an officer's conduct is under serious investigation, Rodriguez said firmly. Your body cam footage has already been flagged and secured. Surrender your weapon. Now. The humiliation that Wilson had so casually inflicted on Michael was now being visited upon him. With shaking hands, he unholstered his gun, carefully removed the magazine, and handed both to the sergeant. His badge followed. Michael watched the scene unfold with mixed emotions. There was no satisfaction in seeing another officer's career potentially end. But the swift response from both the Secret Service and the police department's leadership gave him hope that the system could work as intended. As he walked toward the Secret Service vehicle with Rivera and the other agents, Michael glanced back at his own car. We'll have someone drive your car to the station, Rivera assured him, reading his concern. What happened tonight was unacceptable, Michael. We're going to make sure it's addressed properly. Michael nodded, feeling the adrenaline that had been keeping him focused beginning to ebb, leaving exhaustion in its wake. The night was far from over. There would be statements to give, reports to file, probably media inquiries to dodge. As they drove away from the scene, Michael looked out the window at the neighborhood streets that had seemed so peaceful just an hour ago. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife. Working late? Dinner's in the microwave whenever you get home. He sighed, knowing it would be hours before he saw that leftover pasta. Some things never changed, even when your whole world got turned upside down in the space of a traffic stop. The police station buzzed with unusual activity for a weekday evening. Officers glanced up from their desks as Michael walked in, flanked by Rivera and two other Secret Service agents. Word had clearly spread, the whispers and sidelong looks told Michael that he was already the subject of station gossip, Captain. Rodriguez led them to a conference room rather than an interrogation room, a small but significant courtesy that wasn't lost on Michael. We can take your statement here, Rodriguez said, gesturing to the comfortable chairs around a large wooden table. More civilized than the alternatives. Michael nodded his thanks and took a seat. The walls were lined with commendations and photographs of officers at community events, a visual reminder of what policing was supposed to be about. The contrast with his experience tonight was striking. Can I get you some coffee? Rodriguez offered. It's not great, but it's hot. That would be helpful, thank you, Michael replied, feeling the weight of the evening settling into his bones. He checked his watch, nearly 10 p.m. His day had started 16 hours ago. As Rodriguez stepped out to arrange for coffee, Rivera took the seat beside Michael. The director wants an update as soon as we're done here, she said quietly. This incident is getting attention at the highest levels. Michael rubbed his eyes. I never wanted that kind of attention. It's not about what you wanted, Rivera replied, her voice gentle but firm. It's about what needs to happen. Wilson's conduct can't be brushed under the rug. The door opened and a young officer entered with a tray of coffee mugs, followed by Rodriguez and the sergeant from the scene. Conspicuously absent was Officer Wilson. Wilson is in another room giving his statement, Rodriguez explained, noting Michael's glance toward the door. I thought it best to keep you separated for now. Michael took a mug of coffee and wrapped his hands around it, grateful for the warmth. What happens now? Rodriguez sat across from him, his expression serious. We need your formal statement about what happened, from the moment you were pulled over until we arrived. After that, our internal affairs will conduct a full investigation. Officer Wilson's body camera footage, your dash cam video, and witness statements will all be reviewed. And in the meantime, Rivera asked, Wilson is on administrative leave, effective immediately, Rodriguez confirmed. His badge and gun have been surrendered, as you saw. This isn't his first complaint, though it is by far the most serious. Michael wasn't surprised to hear that Wilson had prior complaints. In his experience, officers who escalated situations unnecessarily rarely did so only once. A knock at the door interrupted them. A woman in a sharp business suit entered, carrying a leather portfolio. This is Diane Thompson, our department's legal counsel. Rodriguez introduced her. Given the seriousness of this incident, she'll be sitting in. Thompson nodded to the room. I've reviewed the preliminary reports and footage. Agent Taylor, I want to personally apologize for what you experienced tonight. Michael acknowledged her with a nod, but remained silent. Apologies were easy. Accountability was harder. Let's begin, Rodriguez said, placing a digital recorder on the table. For the record, please state your name and position. Michael Taylor, Special Agent with the United States Secret Service, currently assigned to the Presidential Protective Detail. The eyebrows of everyone in the room shot up at this last detail. The Presidential Protective Detail was the elite unit of the Secret Service, responsible for the direct protection of the President. You protect the President? The sergeant asked, unable to contain his surprise. Among other duties, yes, Michael replied simply. Rodriguez cleared his throat. Agent Taylor, please walk us through the events of this evening, starting with when you first noticed Officer Wilson's patrol car behind you. For the next 30 minutes, Michael recounted the incident in meticulous detail, his careful compliance, Wilson's immediate aggression, the drawn weapon, the dismissal of his credentials, and the mocking laughter that followed. Throughout his account, Thompson took notes, her expression growing increasingly troubled. When Michael finished, Rodriguez asked, Is there anything you'd like to add about Officer Wilson's conduct or statements that might be relevant to our investigation? Michael considered the question carefully. Yes. When Officer Wilson laughed at my credentials, he said, And I'm the tooth fairy. You expect me to believe the President has you working for him? The implication was clear. What implication was that? Thompson asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. That someone who looks like me couldn't possibly be in such a position, Michael said evenly. Throughout the encounter, Wilson used phrases like you people and treated my legitimate federal credentials as an obvious fake without even attempting to verify them. Rivera added, For context, Agent Taylor recently received a commendation for his work on a high-risk protection detail. He's one of our most respected agents. The door opened again and a young officer poked his head in. Captain, you're going to want to see this. Rodriguez excused himself and stepped outside. Through the partially open door, Michael could see him looking at something on a phone, his expression darkening with each passing second. When Rodriguez returned, his face was grim. The dashcam footage has been leaked. It's already on social media and being picked up by news outlets. The room fell silent. Michael closed his eyes briefly, realizing that what had been a personal ordeal was about to become very public. How bad is it? Rivera asked. Bad, Rodriguez replied. The clip shows everything from when Wilson approached the car to when he laughed at Agent Taylor's credentials. It's gone viral in the last 20 minutes. Thompson immediately pulled out her phone. The department needs to issue a statement immediately. This has the potential to become a major incident. As if on cue, Michael's phone began buzzing with text messages and calls. He glanced down to see his wife's name on the screen along with the message. Are you okay? You're all over the news. Outside the conference room, they could hear increased activity, phones ringing, raised voices, the sound of the station responding to a crisis. Agent Taylor, Rodriguez said, his voice solemn. I want to assure you that we take this matter extremely seriously. Wilson's conduct reflects poorly on this department and on law enforcement as a whole. We will conduct a thorough investigation. Michael nodded but found little comfort in the words. He'd been in law enforcement long enough to know how these things often played out. lengthy investigations that ended with minimal consequences, officers transferred rather than disciplined, and victims advised to move on for the sake of department unity. But as the door opened again and a stream of senior police officials filed in, looking grave and concerned, Michael sensed this might be different. The public nature of the incident, combined with his position in the Secret Service, meant there would be pressure for real accountability. "Chief Anderson is on his way in," announced a deputy chief, a tall woman with short blonde hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. "The mayor's office has called twice already. They want a briefing first thing in the morning." The room had suddenly become crowded with brass. Deputy chiefs, captains, and police department PR staff huddled in corners, speaking in urgent whispers. Michael caught fragments of their conversations: complete disaster for community relations, Wilson's history of complaints, Secret Service agent, "For God's sake. Body cam footage confirms everything." Rivera leaned in close to Michael. "We can leave if you want." "You've given your statement." Michael shook his head slightly. "I'd rather see this through." The conference room door swung open once more and a distinguished-looking man in his 60s entered. Everyone immediately stood straighter. "Chief Anderson," Rodriguez said, stepping forward. "Thank you for coming in so quickly." Chief Anderson nodded curtly, then turned his attention to Michael. "Agent Taylor, I'm Police Chief Robert Anderson. On behalf of this department and the city, I want to express my profound apologies for what happened tonight." Michael stood to shake the chief's hand. "Thank you, sir." "I've reviewed the footage," Anderson continued, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. "Officer Wilson's conduct was inexcusable. I want you to know that I've already initiated termination proceedings." A ripple of surprise went through the room. Termination, not suspension, not reassignment, not early retirement, was virtually unheard of in cases like this without a lengthy investigation first. "Chief," Thompson began, "while I agree with the sentiment, our procedures typically require—" "The footage speaks for itself," Anderson cut her off. "We have a sworn officer drawing his weapon on a federal agent without cause, refusing to verify legitimate credentials, and making statements that clearly indicate bias. The damage to public trust is immeasurable. I will not have officers who conduct themselves this way representing this department." Michael watched as the reality of the situation sank in for everyone in the room. What had begun as a routine traffic stop had escalated into something that would likely define Officer Wilson's career, and perhaps, in some small way, help redefine the relationship between law enforcement and the communities they served. Outside the station, camera lights glowed in the darkness as reporters gathered, hungry for details. Inside, a process of accountability had begun that would test the integrity of the entire department. And Michael, caught in the center of it all, just wanted to go home to his cold pasta dinner and his worried wife. But he knew that some moments called for standing your ground, even when it would be easier to walk away. This was one of those moments. By midnight, the police station had transformed into something resembling a crisis command center. The lobby was packed with reporters, their camera crews setting up impromptu lighting rigs that cast harsh shadows across the walls. Inside, phones rang constantly as city officials, community leaders, and concerned citizens demanded answers. Michael sat in a quiet corner of the break room, finally alone for a moment. He'd spoken with his wife, assuring her he was physically unharmed but emotionally drained. "I'll be home soon," he'd promised, though he wasn't sure if that was true. The door swung open and Rivera entered with 2 cups of fresh coffee. She'd stepped out earlier to coordinate with Secret Service headquarters. "Thought you could use this," she said, sliding one of the cups toward him. "It's from the coffee shop across the street. The station stuff is undrinkable." Michael accepted it gratefully. "Thanks. Any word from headquarters?" Rivera nodded, taking the seat across from him. "The director has briefed the Secretary of Homeland Security. This has escalated quickly, Michael. The White House has been notified." Michael nearly choked on his coffee. "The White House? Why would they—" "You're on the Presidential Protective Detail," Rivera reminded him. "When an agent responsible for the president's safety is held at gunpoint by local law enforcement, it becomes a matter of national security concern." Before Michael could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from his team lead. "POTUS has been briefed on the incident. He's asking if you're okay." Direct quote. Michael stared at the screen in disbelief. The President of the United States was asking about his well-being. The surreal nature of the evening continued to compound. What did headquarters say about next steps? Michael asked, putting his phone away. They're sending a legal team first thing in the morning, Rivera replied. The director wants this handled properly, not just for your sake, but as a matter of precedent. No agent should ever face what you experienced tonight. The break room door opened again, and Captain Rodriguez entered, looking exhausted but determined. Agent Taylor, we have a situation developing that you should be aware of, he said, his voice grave. Officer Wilson is claiming that you were aggressive and threatening during the stop, and that his response was appropriate given your behavior. Michael felt a flash of anger but kept his expression neutral. The dashcam and bodycam footage show exactly what happened. Yes, they do, Rodriguez agreed. But Wilson has hired an attorney who's making noise about edited footage and context. It's nonsense, but they're trying to control the narrative. Rivera's expression hardened. That's not going to fly. We have multiple video sources and witness statements that corroborate Agent Taylor's account. Rodriguez nodded. I know, but I wanted you to be prepared. This might get uglier before it gets better. As if on cue, Chief Anderson appeared in the doorway. Wilson's attorney is holding an impromptu press conference outside. We need to respond. Michael followed the others to a small room with a television mounted on the wall. On screen, a slick-looking attorney in an expensive suit stood before a cluster of microphones, Wilson half hidden behind him. Officer Wilson is a decorated police officer with an exemplary record, the attorney was saying, his voice smooth and practiced. He followed proper procedure when confronted with an uncooperative individual who made sudden movements during a routine traffic stop. Any officer would have responded similarly to protect themselves and the public. Michael felt his jaw tighten. It was a complete distortion of what had happened, but delivered with such confidence that some might believe it. The dashcam video circulating online has been selectively edited to portray my client in the worst possible light, the attorney continued. We call on the department to release the complete unedited footage that will vindicate Officer Wilson. Chief Anderson switched off the television with a disgusted snort. Unbelievable. The complete footage makes him look worse, not better. Then release it, Michael said simply. All eyes turned to him. Release the complete footage, Michael repeated. Both the dash cam and Wilson's body cam. Let the public see exactly what happened from start to finish. Anderson exchanged glances with Thompson, the department's legal counsel who had joined them. That's not standard procedure during an ongoing investigation. This isn't a standard situation, Michael pointed out. If Wilson wants to claim I was aggressive or threatening, let the footage speak for itself. Thompson considered this. It would be unusual, but given the circumstances and the public interest, I think we could justify immediate release. It would certainly counter the narrative Wilson's attorney is trying to establish. Anderson nodded slowly. I'll make the call. Our transparency might be the best response. As the group dispersed to handle the new development, Michael's phone rang. The caller ID showed it was his mother. Mom, it's late. Why are you still up? He answered, stepping away for privacy. Why am I up? My son is all over the news being held at gunpoint by police, and you ask why I'm up? Her voice was a mixture of worry and indignation. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? Michael smiled despite himself. No matter that he was a grown man with a distinguished career protecting the most powerful people in the world. To his mother, he was still her boy who might need her to come over and make everything better. I'm fine. Mom, really, it's been a long night, but I'm okay. I saw that officer on TV just now with his lawyer, trying to make it sound like you did something wrong, she said, her voice rising. The nerve of that man. After what he did to you. The truth will come out, Michael assured her, though he knew from experience that truth wasn't always enough. It better, she replied firmly. Your father would be proud of how you're handling this, you know, keeping your dignity through it all. The mention of his father, a former police officer himself who had passed away 5 years ago, caught Michael off guard. He swallowed hard against the sudden tightness in his throat. Thanks, Mom. I needed to hear that tonight. After promising to call her in the morning, Michael ended the call and rejoined the others. The atmosphere had shifted again. There was a new energy in the room, a sense of purpose. We're releasing the full footage in 30 minutes, Anderson announced. Our media team is preparing a statement to accompany it. Agent Taylor, we'd like you to be present for a press conference tomorrow morning if you're willing. Michael hesitated. He had never sought the spotlight, preferring the behind-the-scenes work of protection. But he understood the importance of putting a face, his face, to this incident. "I'll be there," he agreed. Rivera's phone buzzed, and she checked the message with raised eyebrows. Well, this just got even more interesting. The Secret Service director is flying in tomorrow morning. He wants to attend the press conference as well. Rodriguez whistled low. "This story is going national, isn't it?" "It already has," Thompson said, holding up her tablet to show headlines from major news outlets. "Secret Service agent held at gunpoint by local police. Presidential Security Detail agent racially profiled. Badge bias, when credentials aren't enough." As they prepared for the media storm that would hit in full force by morning, Michael felt a strange calm settling over him. What had happened to him was unjust and dangerous, but it was also an opportunity, a chance to shine light on experiences that too often remained in shadows, dismissed or disbelieved. Outside the station, the number of reporters had doubled. Word had spread that the full footage would be released soon, and they were positioned like runners at the starting blocks, ready to sprint with the story. Inside, a tech specialist was preparing the video files, syncing the dashcam footage with Wilson's body cam to create a split-screen view that would leave no room for misinterpretation. "This is the body cam footage," the tech said, turning his monitor so Michael could see. "I wanted to make sure you're comfortable with us releasing it. It's intense." Michael watched a portion of the footage, saw himself through Wilson's eyes, saw the gun pointed at him, heard the dismissive laughter when he presented his credentials. It was strange and unsettling to watch himself in such a vulnerable position. "Release it," he said firmly. "Every second." Chief Anderson joined them, watching the footage with a pained expression. "I've been in law enforcement for 30 years, he said quietly. "This is not who we are supposed to be." "I know," Michael replied. "My father was a cop for 27 years. He taught me that a badge is a responsibility, not a shield from accountability." Anderson looked at him with newfound respect. "Your father sounds like someone I would have been proud to serve with." He would have expected nothing less than full transparency in a situation like this, Michael said. Especially when it's uncomfortable. As the tech made final preparations to release the footage, Rivera approached with an update from headquarters. "The Secret Service will be issuing a formal statement tonight, expressing full support for you and calling for accountability," she told Michael. "The director has also arranged for legal representation, though it sounds like the department here is doing the right thing so far." Michael nodded, gratitude mixing with exhaustion. The adrenaline that had carried him through the evening was fading, leaving bone-deep weariness in its wake. "You should get some rest," Rivera suggested. "Tomorrow is going to be a long day." "I will," Michael promised. Once the footage is released, they all watched as the tech hit the final button, sending the unedited videos to media outlets and posting them on the department's official channels. Within minutes, notifications began flooding in as the footage was viewed, shared, and commented on across social media platforms. The truth was out there now, unfiltered and undeniable. What happened next would depend on how the world responded to it, and whether this incident, unlike so many others, would lead to real change. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful traffic stop. Michael stood before the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie with practiced precision. The dark circles under his eyes had finally faded, though the memories remained sharp and clear. His phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Rivera. "Press conference in 90 minutes. Car will pick you up in 30. He took a deep breath, studying his reflection. The man looking back at him appeared composed, professional, exactly what was needed today. But appearances didn't tell the whole story. They never did. His wife appeared in the doorway, a mug of coffee in her outstretched hand. "You ready for this?" Michael accepted the coffee with a grateful smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." "They made the right decision," she said, straightening his already perfect tie in that way spouses do when they need to show support through touch. Everyone who's seen the footage agrees. The footage. It had been viewed millions of times across every platform imaginable. Michael had avoided watching the public reaction as much as possible, but it was impossible to escape completely. The video had sparked protests, heated debates on news programs, and countless opinion pieces about policing, racial bias, and accountability, And today, the final decision on Officer Wilson would be announced. "I know," Michael replied, taking a sip of coffee, "but it doesn't change what happened." "No," she agreed, her eyes soft with understanding. "But it might change what happens next time." The doorbell rang, announcing his ride. Michael gathered his things, kissed his wife goodbye, and headed out to face the cameras once more. The police department headquarters was surrounded by media trucks, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like metal trees. A police officer escorted Michael through a side entrance away from the press gathered out front. Inside, the atmosphere was solemn but purposeful. Chief Anderson greeted him with a firm handshake. "Agent Taylor, thank you for coming. The Secretary of Homeland Security and your director are already here." Michael nodded, following Anderson to a conference room where several high-ranking officials had gathered. The Secretary of Homeland Security, a tall woman with steel-gray hair, approached immediately. "Agent Taylor, I want to personally thank you for your professionalism throughout this ordeal. You've represented the Secret Service with dignity under extremely difficult circumstances." "Thank you, Madam Secretary," Michael replied, somewhat overwhelmed by her presence. The director of the Secret Service joined them, his familiar face a welcome sight. "Michael," the director said warmly, clasping his hand, "how are you holding up?" "I'm doing well, sir. Ready to get this behind me?" The director nodded. "After today, hopefully you can. Though I suspect your perspective will be in demand for some time." The room quieted as Thompson, the department's legal counsel, called for attention. "We're set to begin in 15 minutes. I wanted to brief everyone on the format. Chief Anderson will speak first, announcing the results of the internal investigation and the actions being taken. Then the secretary, followed by the director. "Agent Taylor, you'll speak last if you're still comfortable doing so." Michael confirmed that he was. He'd prepared brief remarks, focusing not on his personal ordeal but on the broader implications and the path forward. "Officer Wilson and his attorney have been informed of the decision," Thompson continued. "They've declined to attend today but will likely hold their own press conference afterward." Anderson's expression hardened. "They can say whatever they want. The evidence speaks for itself." As they prepared to move to the press room, Michael's phone buzzed again. It was a text from his mother. "So proud of you, son. Dad is too, wherever he is." Michael smiled, drawing strength from her words as they filed into the room where dozens of cameras and reporters waited. The flashes began immediately, a disorienting strobe that Michael faced with practiced calm, his Secret Service training serving him well in this unexpected spotlight. Chief Anderson approached the podium, the seal of the police department prominently displayed behind him. The room fell silent as he began to speak. 3 weeks ago, an incident occurred in our jurisdiction that has since gained national attention. A decorated Secret Service agent was pulled over, held at gunpoint, and treated with disrespect and contempt by one of our officers. The entire encounter was captured on multiple cameras, and the footage has been viewed by millions of Americans. Today, I am announcing the results of our internal affairs investigation into this incident. After reviewing all evidence, including dashcam footage, body camera footage, witness statements, and interviews with all parties involved, we have determined that Officer James Wilson violated multiple departmental policies and procedures during this encounter. Anderson paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled press. Officer Wilson has been terminated from the police department, effective immediately. Additionally, we have referred the case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to civil rights violations, assault with a deadly weapon, and official misconduct. A murmur rippled through the room. Michael remained expressionless, though inside he felt a complex mix of vindication and sadness. No officer's career should end this way, but actions had consequences, a lesson he'd learned early from his father. Anderson continued, "Furthermore, this incident has prompted a comprehensive review of our department's training protocols, particularly regarding credential verification, de-escalation techniques, and implicit bias. We are implementing mandatory retraining for all officers, with new emphasis on these critical areas." The secretary spoke next, emphasizing the federal government's commitment to ensuring that law enforcement officers respected the credentials and authority of federal agents. The director followed, praising Michael's conduct while underscoring the seriousness with which the Secret Service viewed the incident. Then it was Michael's turn. He approached the podium with measured steps, aware of the weight of the moment. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady. 3 weeks ago, I was driving home after a long day of service to my country. I was pulled over, had a gun pointed at me, and was treated as a threat despite identifying myself as a federal agent. My credentials, the same credentials that grant me access to protect the President of the United States, were laughed at and dismissed. I stand before you today not to dwell on what happened to me, but to speak about what should happen next. This incident isn't just about one traffic stop or one officer's actions. It's about a broader need for trust, respect, and accountability in how we approach law enforcement in this country. Michael paused, making eye contact with various reporters before continuing. My father was a police officer for 27 years. He taught me that wearing a badge means being held to a higher standard, not a lower one. He believed that the authority granted to law enforcement comes with profound responsibility. I entered law enforcement because I believe in protecting others. Every day I work alongside dedicated professionals who put their lives on the line to keep others safe. The actions of Officer Wilson do not reflect the values of the many good officers who serve with honor. However, when misconduct occurs, we must address it directly and transparently. The decision announced today is a step toward accountability, but our work doesn't end here. Real change requires ongoing commitment, from police departments, from communities, and from each of us as individuals. Michael's words resonated through the silent room. Even the most seasoned reporters seemed moved by his measured, thoughtful approach. I'm grateful to Chief Anderson and this department for taking appropriate action. I'm thankful for my colleagues at the Secret Service who responded quickly that night and who have supported me since. And I'm especially grateful to the witnesses who spoke up and recorded what happened, ensuring that the truth could not be denied or distorted. Going forward, I hope this incident serves not as a source of division, but as a catalyst for meaningful conversation and change. Thank you. The questions came rapidly after that, about his feelings toward Wilson, whether he would pursue civil action, how the experience had affected him personally. Michael answered each with the same measured thoughtfulness, neither minimizing the seriousness of what had occurred, nor expressing vindictiveness toward Wilson. When asked if he harbored anger toward the former officer, Michael paused before responding. I don't focus on anger, he said finally. I focus on improvement. Officer Wilson made serious mistakes that night, but the more important question is what we all learn from those mistakes. If this incident helps prevent similar situations in the future, then something positive will have come from it. As the press conference concluded, Michael felt a sense of closure beginning to take shape. The nightmare of that traffic stop would always be part of his story, but it wouldn't define him or his career. Outside the building, away from the cameras, the director pulled him aside. The president would like to meet with you next week if you're willing. He's been following this case closely and wants to discuss your experience. Michael nodded, somewhat overwhelmed by the thought. Of course. And there's something else, the director added. We're establishing a new training program on credential recognition and interagency cooperation for local law enforcement. We'd like you to help develop and lead it. For the first time in weeks, Michael felt something beyond the weight of what had happened, a sense of purpose, of moving forward rather than looking back. I'd be honored, he said. As he walked toward the car that would take him home, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from his wife. You were amazing. Dad would be so proud. Michael smiled, feeling the truth of those words deep in his heart. Sometimes justice